Hey there, all of you out there listening in podcast land. Once again, we are back on the hub grass. I am your host, Mason Betterly, with my illustrious friend and co-host, Matt Arterberry, and we have a very special Halloween episode for you this week. As I said last week, we were wrapping up our month of the mansion, and for our actual Halloween episode, we had something really special here. We have invited Jules Cecere on to the show. Some of you, if you're avid on TikTok or Instagram, you will be very familiar with her project Urban Legends America. It's an ongoing project that she has sort of been developing here for a while, and we're going to be talking all about that this week. How are you doing today, Jules?
Doing good. How are you?
Well, we're very grateful to have you here on the show for a very special episode.
I'm very excited.
But before we get started, getting to those, getting to the bulk of our episode this week, we did have something really special we did want to do here. We actually got some listener emails. So I was very excited. So is it all right if I read through those real quick, Matt?
Of course, we've hit the big time. We have
this is what we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
So we got a message from a friend of the show, Tim St. Aubin. He reached out and because at the end of the episode last week, we were talking about how Orlando's Haunted Mansion doesn't feel like it has its own kind of signature ghost, whereas a lot of the others kind of do. They have something unique about them, and he actually offered a really great perspective because, of course, he is on the West Coast. Disneyland is his home park. So he said, he wrote in, I'm almost done with the Phantom Manor episode. I always thought, and when I was out there, I noticed Leota was a way bigger deal in Florida. So I personally feel like she's sort of Florida's signature ghost. Just a thought. So I thought that was a really interesting perspective, and I didn't think about that before. I feel because she does have Memento Mori, which is sort of based as her. There's that big portrait of her. She has her own little that special headstone, right by the door. So I thought that was an interesting thought.
So is the headstone not in Anaheim as well? I guess I assumed it was there, but
what was that? I'm sorry.
So is the headstone not in Anaheim?
No, not as I'm aware of. I don't think so. That's just original.
That makes a difference.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I feel like that makes a difference because that was like my first mansion experience was the headstone. So that kind of breaks everything through for me. So knowing that they don't have one is odd.
Yeah, it's very, and I think there's always been something very special about that. That I don't know, that theming element, or I don't know what specifically, to call it within functionality, but I do think that has always been something since it debuted, and I think that was in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. It's always just been a very popular element, and so I think there has been, because they even had Leota's cart as kind of the gift shop back before Memento Mori opened. Yeah. So I think she always has had a bit more of a presence there. So I just find that interesting.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, at least the perspective, and I think that's an interesting response to kind of us being like, we don't have anything special. Like, I would say yes, like maybe she is like kind of like the head haunt, or at least the most popular haunt here in Florida. But I think our point was that like there's no like unique haunt to
that's
Florida.
Fair.
So Tim, I think that's fair to say that she's kind of our mascot in a way, but I don't know if she's like obviously she's not unique to our mansion. So
then we did have this fun story. It's not it was sort of just a personal story from one of our listeners. So they wrote in, so October 1999, I'm 6, almost 7. My aunt took my parents and my brother and myself to Disneyland. We got to New Orleans Square. The gang started making its way towards the Haunted Mansion. The second I recognized it, or that second I recognized it from the Disney Sing-Alongs video. the one with the creepy or the dancing creepy trees, which had given me several nightmares that were so messed up. I couldn't even stand hearing grinning ghosts. Something snapped. You you ask if I cried. I ask if ghosts haunt. Hell yes, I cried. Sobbed my eyes out in front of the gate in front of everyone. Not throwing a fit. Not screaming like a banshee. Genuine paralyzing fear. It took my dad hurriedly buying a churro and saying that there would be another one at the end of the ride to get me in line. We got closer to the door. I took one look at one of the butlers. More tears. Not screaming. This was a kind of crying you see from a kid who is so scared they're afraid to even make a ton of noise. We got inside. I heard the organ playing that song. I hear the ghost host. And and mind you, I'm 6 at the time. These weren't special effects. The room was actually stretching, and there was a friggin' corpse hanging in the rafters. I froze. My dad had to literally guide me to the doom buggy because I was not walking another willing step into this freaking ghost house of doom. It's a long story. We're almost there. We got to the loading room, and I saw another butler walking that treadmill thing they have. What the F was that? My dad herded me into the doom buggy, and the ghost host started talking into my ear. I clamped my hands over my eyes and plugged my ears with my thumbs. My dad managed to get me to uncover my eyes in the graveyard just in time for one of those pop up from behind something ghosts to pop up. Nope. Heard that effing song again. Eyes covered again. Dad said I was going to miss the best part. Stupidly, I uncovered my eyes in front of the mirror where a hitchhiking ghost appears in the freaking doom buggy. Yep. With the ghost host saying, one's going to follow me home. Finally, the doom buggy safety bar went up, and so did I. I don't think my feet really touched the ground as I booked it out of there. For 10 years, I hated the very idea of the Haunted Mansion. We didn't go to Disneyland again until my brother and I were 16. This was just us for one of those days, and my brother was surprisingly encouraging. We went in, and I was just in awe. Totally different experience. It was an artistic masterpiece and a brilliant example of entertainment and engineering. I fell in love with it. We got right back in line. So I just think that was a fantastic story. I really wanted to share that.
So funny.
So yeah. So before, just kind of follow up our story there for the mansion. I thought it was fun that we got, an actual fan story there beyond, what we were kind of talking about. So
yeah.
Jules, I know you have from what I've seen and from what I'm kind of gathered, some strong feelings about, that Imagineering, engineering, and those sort of, theme park design is obviously huge for you. Do you have any, experiences with the mansion?
Oh, I as you were like reading the story, it like brought flashbacks the way that I'm a scaredy cat. I am. I love spooky things when I'm separated. So when I was younger, I grew up near Canopy Lake Park. So my only kind of envisioning or like your first experience into like creepy things was they had a ride called The Haunted Mine. I still close my eyes. It's so dumb. The gags are perfect. But that's all I kind of really knew. So when my parents took us to Disney World the first time, we were in line. So the line queue didn't have any of like the pieces that they have now. They don't have the organ or the games. They only had the graveyard. And so I remember I was like, I can't do this. And then I was like, I need my dad to come pick me up. Right. So he's holding me and I'm seeing like over his shoulder and I'm looking at Leota's gravestone. This is the the moment, right? And I'm looking at it, and it looks like, how like when people close their eyes and you can see their eyes moving underneath their like eyelids. That's what I thought I was seeing. So I'm like, this is something else. I don't know what the hell's going on. And then her eyes flick open. I was like, oh my God. And then he puts me down and then we're getting in. And oh my God. I was like, this is terrible. I am so scared that I made sure that I was like, my parents are going with me and I am sitting directly in the center. So that was the traumatic thing for me. Little did I know that my mom made my sister go on the alien ride.
Oh,
and
no.
So my mom knows what's going on. And my sister's like, do you feel that? My mom's like, no, what are you talking about? And then evil. But those are like our two like experiences. And like, it's again, like you go again and you're like, that was like the trigger moment of like, I love everything about this. And then I read more into it and just I love the idea of how much of like, lack of a better term, how much of a shit show it was getting everything together and getting everybody to coexist and try to figure everything out. I was like, this is great. This is wonderful. I love every moment of this. So, but I've never been to the Disneyland one. I've never been to Disneyland. So it's like, my whole experience is basically based off of like what Disney World has done. So,
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And I do think that the adage of the interactive queue there does take away from that initial feeling, when you were originally in the queue, and it's a much more, I guess, for lack of a better word, more of a cold open to it, because it's again, you don't really have. It's all, that darker, not Raleigh Crump, Claude Coates sort of vibe for that first portion of the ride. Until you get, again, to the ballroom and more Mark Davis influence. But yeah, I do like that I do appreciate the interactive queue. I think it's fun. It's, fun to get new things for it, but I do kind of miss that that feeling of dread going into the mansion.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just in a sense of just like the queue line in general. I wish that they had those aspects. Like, you would think that the stuff that they kind of set up ends up in the ride. So especially going back to that conversation about like, we don't have like a signature thing. The only person that's alluded to is Leota. So that kind of makes sense that they would see it that way, because nothing else, like you don't see the family in the mansion. You don't see the sea. No. I think the sea captain was just a way to like give a nod to like what the original story was going to be, but you don't see them again.
Yeah. I do think with Culpepper Client, I think I've always taken it that he's a reference to that Mariner painting over that one hallway. It was, part of the Sinister group there. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I do not like the Dredd family that's there. I think the style is, and I think we talked about it on there, that the style just doesn't really jive with the rest of it. And it sort of takes away from the rest. It's always been weird to me.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Culpepper, is he in Anaheim at all? Is he in their graveyard or anything
his paintings
like
that? I think his paintings in there, but but that's it. That's it. The only other thing would be again, and I'm and I could be wrong, but I'm tying that painting of the the captain guy against with the stormy background or whatever. And I think they had an action figure of him a while back. Really? It was weird, but cool. Yeah, I wanted to get him, but I got Ezra instead. So. But yeah, so, but yeah, wrapping that up there, Matt, did we have any other, like news kind of things to be covering? I know this has been a very busy time for parks news, and we've just been focusing on the Haunted Mansion. So,
well, and I want to cover a couple things. One, obviously, the big story has been the Lightning Lane introduction, as well as Genie Plus. What have your guys' thoughts been on this rollout? And like, obviously, I don't think any of us have been there yet. But what have your opinions been on? Do you think that you'll use it if you go? Do you think there's certain parks or attractions that are worth it, or just kind of the general response you've seen from parks fans that have been to the park so far?
I think, Mason, you should take this.
No. No, if you have thought,
No,
go.
I don't have. I honestly don't have any like thoughts on it because I'm not a pass holder. I'm not there as much as I am, and so when it comes to like anything that's like extra things, I'm very much like me and my family have been very much like we're on vacation. So if we plan things, it's like, are you sure you want? Like, so we're kind of not. We've never been that kind of family, so it kind of glazes into like my idea of it. So I haven't like dove deep into like Genie Plus or the Lightning Lane. Like even when my sister and I went recently, we didn't even do Fast Pass. We just kind of walked around, enjoyed everything, and took our time. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I don't have any thoughts and any process in it.
Yeah.
Mason?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'm kind of in a similar place. I'm not a pass holder, and I don't get to go as much as I would like. I don't even get to go as much as I would dream I like. So, doesn't make any grammatical sense, but I hope you get the spirit of what I'm saying. But yeah, it's difficult. I would give it a shot. There are attractions I would invest in. Things like Rise of the Resistance, things, really ones where the line is always going to be difficult. I do think that these sorts of programs, even Fast Pass in the past, creates an environment that necessitates them. And that is one thing that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah.
But for what it is, I'll give it a shot. It is what it is right now. I don't know if maybe it'll last. Maybe they're going to make adjustments. Again, it's a learning process, and we're seeing that a lot with a lot of rollouts recently. They're kind of making adjustments as they go, and it's been a very difficult time for the parks. So I'm hoping that things get better.
Yeah.
Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. It is what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, my general thought is, hey Mason, February, mark your calendar. We're going. But I would say that I have been, I don't know if I say I'm a fan of Genie Plus, but I think it has its place. Insofar as it kind of forces you to kind of take your day as it comes. And I think as someone who was very much involved, like obsessive over like getting up at 6 a.m. and doing the whole reservation thing for Fast Pass and dining reservations, that was kind of exhausting, and it was difficult to kind of think about, well, in 3 months from now, I definitely want to ride Mansion at like 5 p.m. or whatever.
I would never pay to ride the Mansion. I love it, but I would never pay because it's part of the I don't know.
Sure.
I just Fast Passes for that. I know that's not what you're trying to say, but
Yeah. No, what I'm saying is that the Fast Pass system was broken in the fact that you had to like decide months in advance what you wanted to do. And I think that's the positive Lightning Lane. Lightning Lane is it forces you to kind of live in the moment and just kind of reserve things as you go. But I think it also takes away some of like, I know for sure I want to go to this restaurant at this time. I think you still can reserve dining in advance. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. At least sit sense. Down. I think you can, but it forces you to be more spontaneous about your ride choices and when you would ride things. And I think there are certain investments that are important depending on the person in terms of what ride you want to ride. Because for me, I will pay to ride Rise. I will pay to at least for my kids ride Slinky Dog, things like that. But like you said, Mason, I think there's certain things that will have low enough queues that you don't need to pay for the Fast Pass, like Haunted Mansion. At least I hope. And I think there's certain parks that make more sense to have Genie Plus than others. Like studios right now, and I think Epcot are pretty much useless in terms of Lightning Lane, or at least in terms of Genie Plus. I think there's some good Lightning Lanes in those parks, but From what I've surmised from different influencers and people I know that have been talking about their experiences, is that Magic Kingdom is the place to have Genie Plus, because there's so many rides, there's so many things to get done that it makes sense to have that kind of guided concierge. And I think the one thing that's really great has been the tip boards as well. You sort of like jump into each map and like scroll around to find the wait times. You can just pop into the tip board. You have the whole list. Yeah, I think that's very useful. I think there's some really great useful tips that Genie and Genie Plus can offer, and it's really coming on the individual whether or not you want to use the paid fast pass. Lightning lane. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, I think I'm open to trying, and it's just gonna have to be. It's gonna be a matter of giving it a shot when I get a shot. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens
definitely.
There.
Definitely. Yeah. One last bit of kind of silly news. Mason and I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier today. Jules, are you a fan of Funko Pops?
Yes and no. I have mine. Okay. I do. I have Madame Leota. I have Gimli. I have a few other ones all over the place. But I found that I found that I have nowhere to put them, and then I focus more on antique stuff just cause. But when people buy them for me, I'm like, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But I love seeing them. I love when they always bring out new stuff. So.
Yeah. So I've been a recent collector of Funko Pops. I kind of dove in pretty deep, pretty quickly, especially with Disney parks ones. You have Jungle Cruise and the Pirate on the Gold. Yeah. And so right when I got into Funko Pop collecting was my heyday in a way was when the 65th anniversary Pops came out for Disneyland, where they had Minnie on Dumbo, Peter Pan on Peter Pan's Flight, that attraction vehicle. They did just really cool attraction ride vehicles, and their characters like Mr. Toad on the Toad car, things like that. And so today, a list of leaked Pops came out for Disney's 50th, which included the dog with keys from Pirates, Mickey Mouse on a Space Mountain vehicle, Captain Hook on a Peter Pan's Flight vehicle, 2 Tomorrowland Transit Authority Pops, which is the same blue Tomorrowland vehicle, with Mickey and Minnie on separate Pops. So it's not them together; it's 2 separate Pops. At least that's what the leaked list came out and said. Yeah. As well as, am I missing one, Mason?
I just think Dumbo's. I think you mentioned.
Oh yeah, the Dumbo and Goofy.
So it's sort of a continuation of that.
Yeah. So I had mentioned I think months ago that, or maybe a month or two ago, I was we talking about 50th merch, and I said I need a Dreamfinder.
You said that literally on our first episode. You said that on the first episode.
That's hilarious. And I said, if we don't get a Dreamfinder, I riot. And I sent Mason a text earlier.
I remember that now. Yes.
Yeah, I sent Mason a text earlier. I was like, hey, they released the there's a leaked list of the Funko Pops. Yeah. And I sent him of the image from Shrek where they're all getting their pitchforks and torches, because there wasn't a Dreamfinder on the list. Yep. But I want to talk about it because I think it's super lazy, the choices they made, because Funko makes some really cool items and they work with Disney really well. But this release I think is really poor, minus the dog with keys, and the Space Mountain vehicles are going to be cool. But I think it's bizarre that the fetishized obsession that Disney adults have of Tomorrowland Transit Authority has now spilt over.
Stop! That's no fair. That's cruel. That's not fair.
Is it?
Also,
is it not fair?
This is a leaked list, so it may not be. Just let them have their fun. Let the people mover people have their fun.
I really
they are
hope,
a simple folk.
I really hope to spite all those people that it's a super exclusive, there's only 500 pieces, and
that's not
pay,
nice.
Pay the scalpers.
It's
because
a
I
it's
can't
a Funko
they took
Seattle
away my
exclusive.
Splash Mountain Pops that I can't get it. That they have to pay the crazy amount for
my
Tomorrowland
goodness.
Pops. I don't get it. And then also I hope maybe it's a different vehicle for Peter Pan's flight, but they're just gonna pop Hook in there and call it a new pop. I think it's again lazy, and then to put Goofy into Dumbo again because we already have Minnie.
Well, some people like the continuation of like having the whole Fab Four there and stuff. I don't know. I wasn't too upset about
Maybe.
Am I a little disappointed? Did I want to see some classic characters? Like you said, Big Al or something like that. Yeah, that'd be fun. But it is what it is.
Because their marketing is like the 50th. These pops are like Magic Kingdom attractions, but I'm like you're missing out on the Country Bears. Like that one's on the glaring missing opportunity.
It always is there. Though. It's always but yeah, no, I know.
Yeah,
it's just
no, I can see them.
But that's
Yeah.
If you guys actually have opinions on it, feel free. I'm just kind of.
Well, I was just gonna say like
bent out of shape about it.
I agree with you to a certain extent. Like if it's the 50th. I wish that there were more things that were like the 50th and what made things different than Disneyland because there are differences and I think that they should accentuate that. Yeah. So as much as you could put the Fab Five and that's like the basis, but you could, what if you had Mr. Toad? Because that was such a big thing when it was first at Magic Kingdom and then when it left. Yeah. That was like a big impact on like everybody. And then... but I guess that wouldn't be because now I guess isn't it still at Disneyland and it's not at Disney World? So.
Yeah, and I think they did that for the 65th.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So it would be like So or things that like focused on like especially how Liberty Square is there and it's not New Orleans Square, or just things that like Sleepy Hollow. Like imagine like that's so like that's Magic Kingdom. So I don't know.
Oh my gosh!
But I'm a stickler for Sleepy Hollow. So I'm like, I want more of that. I was thinking recently, I was like, do we have any ears? I need some ears, please. So
that would actually be really cool. Like you have one ear is sort of like the moon with the horseman backlit, and then the other is the pumpkin. Like he threw it, and that's that would be fun.
I would love it.
That would be
fun. I would love it. But so I wish they would give them a little more love to those different pieces that make them different because that's, I mean.
Yeah.
What I wanted when I heard it was going to be Magic Kingdom is I wanted Uncle Orville in a basket. But still no John Progress or anything from Carousel. But also come on.
It'd be fun.
They're like they do have to sell though. So
that's true.
Sell. I would call Funko up like Funko. If Uncle Orville in a tub doesn't sell, I'll take a pallet.
He's like, I'll buy all of them. I'll get the bulk set.
I'll eat the cost. I just want to see a tub with a man's feet in a Uncle Sam hat sticking out.
Sunday based off of him.
Yeah, that's fair.
Uncle Orville sell.
Yeah. Well, jumping
over.
With that, we're just gonna cut that right there.
End episode.
Unless you want to spend another 20 minutes talking about a Funko Pop about Orville.
One episode dedicated just to him.
Yeah. You've actually come onto this episode as a ruse.
Yes.
This is actually all about Uncle Orville. This is an Uncle
I'm glad
Orville
to just
episode.
sit in.
But in all seriousness, jumping over to our main subject for this week, Jules, you have been working on this project, Urban Legends America. Obviously, Matt and I know a lot about it, but for our listeners out there who may not, what is Urban Legends America?
So, Urban Legends America. Wow. Now I think of it. This was the biggest issue when I was in school trying to explain it. So it's basically a collection of America's urban legends all in one spot. But it's very reminiscent of like Magic Kingdom and Epcot in the sense of like it's very reminiscent and familiar architecture that we would see in American history. And then you have to go find these items or these creatures. So that's where the attractions come in. But it's all very familiar in that, very distinct architecture between, because you'll see it all different ways, between New England's colonial aspects to all the way in California where everything is, it can be very Hispanic, villas and items like that. And you'll see them kind of speckled in, but they're not like the main aspect of what people like would remember or see about those areas. So I wanted to mix in things like ghost stories, true crime, cryptids, history, and architecture and in culture, and put it all together in a nice place where it's kind of like digestible and enjoyable, and for people to meet Mothman, I
Yes. Yes. Well, and that's like the main thing. I think when I first saw some of your TikToks actually, was, I think it was actually not too long after we did our Beastly Kingdom episode. And we were talking about how cool it would be if there was just a whole park devoted to kind of, I think in that episode we were talking about kind of the same concept as Beastly Kingdom, but there was an area specifically for cryptids. Yeah. So then shortly after, to see your idea, where I know that's not the main draw, but to see where that's an aspect, and these urban legends and stuff, it was just really exciting to see. We've talked about this before. I'm a big Mothman fan myself.
You got to touch his butt, so.
He slapped his ass, and it felt great. But yeah, so it was just really, exciting to see this kind of a concept where you've taken it so, looks like you're taking it to such an incredible degree in such painstaking attention to detail for what I could see, and it's just really great. So. Yeah, I think you had mentioned this started as a senior thesis, right?
Yeah. It started as the way that it was structured is you kind of took two different classes. So your first part was that you pick a subject and you research it thoroughly. You have basically the whole semester to figure that out and what you wanted to do. And a lot of my friends, they're great. They were doing a lot of like fundraisers and just like stores or awareness things, and it was really good, and I loved whatever they were doing, and it was so interesting to see what everybody was doing, because you're with like 33 people and you're just kind of bouncing ideas around and everyone's doing whatever, and you're like, what'd you figure out this week? And it was great, and it was wonderful. And then when you get to the second part, that's when you put everything into motion and just try to show like here's your subject, what are you going to do with it? So because I was a graphic designer, like I said, a lot of people did those aspects because you do a lot of branding, you do a lot of logo design and what we were used to. And as much as I was like, okay, I was like, I'm doing a theme park. And my favorite professor, she was like, yeah, wow. And I was like, same. I don't know what I'm going to do, but okay. And she's been with me like on it all the time. And then the big scare happened, and I had to do everything from home and trying to do everything on Zoom and trying to explain everything when I was putting everything on a wall. And I was like, here's all this. But yeah, so my beginnings of the project was a lot of research into like my own friends, and I wanted to show the aspects of how everything is very different to how you are brought up, the town you were brought up in, the family that you have grown up in, your culture, and whatever you had. My dad used to scare me and pick random houses and say, do you want to go knock on Three-Fingered Willie's house? Because his brother told him that story. And I hated it. I was so scared. But he would, and I never caught on to it. He was always like, this house. And I was like, it's another house, but he must live in all these houses. No, I'm not going to knock on his door. Like he would park and then be like, are you going to do that? And I was like, no, no. But I had like multiple different aspects. Like my boyfriend grew up hearing like ghost stories, and also like he lives more near woodsy areas, so he heard an urban legend about an albino farm. It's so different. Another friend of mine, she grew up, her family is, I think she's Chinese, and she would talk to me about how they had their version of Day of the Dead, and that you had to stay within it was like 3 days. The day before, the day the portal opens, and then the day that it closes. And you didn't want to be outside on the 3rd day because that meant that the people already missed their chance. Now it's spirits that are wandering now that are stuck. And you don't want to be there when they're walking around. And she was there at the time. And she was studying abroad, and she said that she was leaving the library to get to her dorm. And she was walking the main road, but she had to go down one alley. And she said that she saw a woman facing the wall, and I think she was hovering a little bit up off the ground. And she's like, I have to get past her to get to the other side. And she says, I didn't look at her. I just ran, sprint, never coming back. No. And she got to her dorm, and she's like, that was the scariest. I never. So it's like, you see that they're like, you see that that's what she grew up with. And that's what he grew up with, and they're very different. It's very much like she's focused on her culture and her spirituality, whereas his was like, these were my friends. This is the area that we grew up in, and we would scare each other because that's what we did when we were together. So it's like, it's very different aspects, and so that's why this was exciting, because I was like, not a lot of people are going to know small town things. Even myself, like where I grew up, I had to go to my town's museum to find even the littlest aspects of urban legends that I never heard about, because they're not on the internet. Like even the one that I found at the museum, I don't know how many pages into Google I had to go in to find these aspects. So it's like, that's why this is focused on what people really don't know. And as much as I love Mothman and you know, the
heavy hitters.
A lot of people are going to love them, but the point is to have everything that people don't know come to the forefront and see those differences, and also the little details of a difference of culture, especially in Louisiana, where there's Cajun and there's Creole, and there's different aspects. It's very different, and you're going to see that between the food, because that was a big aspect of those differences. Rambling. But those are the aspects and kind of those examples of trying to kind of give an idea of like what you would experience in these places. So,
yeah.
Wow.
Well, fantastic. No, it's fantastic. So, like, I know you have kind of, I think it sort of, from how I understand it, kind of going through, you know, how you've been working on it. I think you have like a kind of a Bostonian sort of more colonial sort of designed area. Is that right?
Yeah. So.
And that.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No. It's fine. Cause it's just, I grew up in the Northeast. So, I'm very excited about that. Obviously, Sleepy Hollow for me, it has a very, near and dear place in my heart. I grew up in South Jersey, so I've, again, with those heavy hitters, you have like Jersey Devil there. It was very much part of the culture, growing up. So what is, and I know, you said you wanted to focus on those smaller stories. So how do you go about gathering, kind of getting and culminating all these smaller stories to kind of differentiate between sort of those more mainstream things?
Good question. So as of right now, everything is kind of like regional. So I know a lot of people are like, you should do this state, and it's very hard to like imagine 50 states when even in Epcot they only picked a few pavilions. So it's like, so I kind of have to do things a little bit regional. I am a little biased with the Eastern area just because I have Boston, Salem, and Revere. They're very, because like those are the places that I grew up in. Those are the most accessible areas that I can go and talk to people. And I think that's another reason why I started this project on TikTok. And kind of posted it other places, because I wanted people to be like, yeah, I grew up in this place. This is what my parents used to tell me. Like I had one girl comment on my bayou ride. I think she said my dad used to, he lived off the bayou, and she would tell him about and it's not Fifolet, it's Fifolet, that someone corrected me. And it was and it's like, and that's another thing. Like, I like that people are like, this is what I grew up on. This is my idea of what Even like I had a few people, they're like, well, Cajun is very different. I'm like, I hear you. I hear you. Don't you worry. But I want to hear them from other people, and it's really nice to open it up. And that's why I just want people to kind of talk and tell me and like see what they enjoy in there when they grew up, because that was the basis of the project when I first was doing the research for it. But yeah.
Yeah. So how long has has this been going on now? Because
So I've been doing this project since the beginning of my senior year. So it might be 2 years, maybe a year now. So
okay.
I've kind of been like working on it like nonstop, because even when I had the summer, I was working on it because I was like, I don't know where to start. So I used Imagineering in a Box, which is free and it's great. And I also used a lot of Imagineering books. And so that's kind of the basis of what I do use for the attraction playlist on my TikTok, that I kind of give an example of what the terms would be used in Imagineering, and then give you an example of what I'm using. And like when I used, when I posted about weenies, it's like a great way of digesting it for people to be like, it's not just a castle. It's literally the center, the epicenter of everywhere. So you can navigate where you go. And Imagineering in the Box kind of dives more into the graphic design or design aspect of those pieces, and kind of telling a story without people kind of knowing it. You're kind of digesting it without even realizing it, because you don't have to read stuff. Some of it is readable, but some of it is just like, you see that and I understand, I get it, especially like, or in the line cues. You're digesting everything and seeing all those aspects, and then you get on the ride and you're like, I know exactly where I am. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly what the story is. I'm ready to go. And that's kind of how exciting it is, and how not to like, wow, I want to dive into the details so bad. And it's like, no, you got to pull back a little bit and do the map and figure it out before you start doing restaurants and telling people that there's a little spice in this one, but there's not enough in this one. So it's like, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. What I thought was so cool about that TikTok video was about the weaning of your park was that carousel, because that was the origin of Animal Kingdom. Was they would have this large double-decker carousel with all these animals. So I thought, my curiosity was, did you know about the history of Animal Kingdom, and it kind of like happened that that's what you created?
I didn't know.
Or did you?
No, I didn't know
Wow,
that.
that's
so
awesome.
It's actually, I was
That's
talking to
awesome.
my mom about it just to figure it out, because I kind of had this idea from it. I kind of all was inspired by like iron gates and cemetery gates. And so I was like, I don't know how to, because I don't want to pick one. And that was the same thing that I was struggling with the logo, because I was like, I don't want to pick a specific cryptid, because that wouldn't, it needs to be like all encompassing, which it's like the gates, graveyard gates and iron gates that kind of have this reminiscence of like the haunted house, the cemetery. Anywhere creepy, it's usually this like broken gate, and also the memento mori, which is very reminiscent of like New England burial grounds, and like the first kind of aspect of showing mortality on like our dead, instead of just like sailing them off or doing something else. So yeah.
No, I thought it was so cool too, is that like when I first saw your project, I was thinking like, this is like the fanciful version of what Disney's America would have been, of this like very dark and mythical version of America versus Disney's America, which was more like a historical approach, like patriotic approach. I thought it was really interesting. Like kind of my Disney mind went right to those two places. Like, oh, there's the kind of the more urban legend style of Disney's America, and then obviously the Animal Kingdom tie-in was really neat too.
Yeah, I got that a lot, that they're like, this is like USA, like Freedom Land, and as much as it is, obviously it's like that idea that it's American history, but it's not as people suffering and making entertainment out of it. I don't want to do that. It's like, I had a lot of people comment, they're like, well, what about the indigenous aspect of these things? Like, are you going to emphasize that? And I said, if it's a religious belief, it's not going in there. And I fully believe that. I don't want to show like I said, like there is an aspect of history that it's sad. It's a lot of stuff like that, but I'm not trying to make a buck over teaching people slavery. That's not what theme parks are about. They shouldn't be about. And so there's a difference between like showing suffering and the history of and lying about history and also just not acknowledging any of it. And so that's another aspect of just like hard hitting research and getting people involved and talking to people and making sure that you get everything right. And that's why even getting into like the Louisiana area, I've been, it's all love and I love it. I love going and deep diving and hearing people talk about what they think and what they grew up with and the history of those aspects, because it's very impactful of what urban legends are. Whatever they go through is how it starts. So I love it. And that's why you'll see like in Cajun or Louisiana stuff, it's very Catholic. Starts Catholic and then moves into more different aspects as people kind of grow out of it because it's not as common. Yeah. Little history lesson.
It's great because you're so in the mix of this process that it's really cool to get an eye in, because personally I think that there is just such a large community that are invested in these sort of subjects, with these kind of more macabre themes. And I think that it's become, and maybe even because it's been more, I don't know, maybe on our mind, in recent history due to some recent events, that I think these things have really come to the forefront for a lot of people. There are, you have these true crime podcasts that are a big deal now and that are huge, and that are becoming more mainstream and things like this. And a lot of cryptids have also, I don't know if it's the algorithm putting it in front of me, but I feel like it's a lot of people or a lot of people are getting, interested in these things. So I think, there's something really special with the idea of this that has legs, that, can go far.
I hope so. I think a lot of people are excited about it, and I think a lot of people talk about like having it be crowdfunded. And I always laugh at the people who are like, "Do you have money?" There was one person that I remember. It stuck with me because I just laughed about it because he was like, "Oh, so you're a history kid with millions of dollars," and I was like, "I'm broke as the day is long." Like I'm just excited to do something, and so it, as much as it is like a dream, and I would love to do it, building is just not. It's not in the cards right now because like if you don't have anything creative to show, what are you're going to be like? I want to build a theme park, and they're going to be like, okay, what do you got?
Exactly.
So got to convince somebody with something. So
you got to put together your creative Avengers. You got to be like the Nick Fury of theme parks and get your ducks in a row in that aspect. I know right now it's a matter of again of creating that, doing the tough work of creating these concepts and things like that. But yeah, I am curious with this. I know you have your you have kind of the notion of kind of a formula akin to Magic Kingdom and Epcot and these sort of setups. What kind of like in your ideal concept, what kind of lands like are you planning in like together? How many lands do you think there would be?
So I'm kind of separating it as like we would naturally separate or how we section off the United States. So you have like the Northeast or mostly the East, the South, Midwest and West. And like, I think we have like the Northwest. So it's like, I still kind of have to like kind of get those areas, kind of figure those out. Cause I'm very adamant on like, now I'm in the East area. I got the East area. There's the Southern area. That's the Southern area. And then like West is very, but it's like, there's, I think, the way that it's set up, and I always, now that I'm like thinking of it, I'm just like, what about Hawaii and Alaska? Like, where do you if they're not in that what you naturally section off, like where do you put it? And so I'm always thinking of like that and how to structure the map. So it's very much like when I tell you sometimes I just don't know what I'm doing and I'm spitballing and throwing things at the wall. I'm throwing things at the wall and seeing if they stick and then kind of working with it. But absolutely, like I'm still kind of sectioning off regionally. So not by state, but by region. So that makes sense.
No, and that makes complete sense, and I think that's very wise to do, because I do think you have those regions where certain types of stories or narratives, be it the ghost story, be it the cryptid, I think there's kind of a common through line with a lot of them in those regions that would that tie them together. But yeah, so what I hate to kind of put you on the spot like this, but what would you say would be your favorite story that you're looking to put into the park?
I mean, I really love the aspects of what I got when I went to my town's museum, because we all know about we love the Headless Horseman, and he's such like an iconic figure. And when I found out that my own town has our own horseman, it's like worlds collided, because it was like Pirates of the Caribbean in Sleepy Hollow. And you make them kiss, and then they made this beautiful baby. And it was in the Point of Pines that we had the buried treasure. And it was about this massive pirate horseman that protects his treasure. And he's
fantastic.
And he's gross and he's scary. And I was like, I love it. Oh, I love him so much. But there's so many aspects of just like I'm very biased towards those things. Like, and I'm also biased towards Charlie. He's not really an urban legend, but he stands out as this figure because he kind of was the center. He's on like our Charlie cards. He's our figure. A friend of mine's dad made the Charlie card, or like the logo on the Charlie card. And so it's like everything is like a small world, and it's very full circle. And it's such a cutesy kind of story, but also melds into the bigger aspect of an attraction like an abandoned train station, because there are so many tunnels under Boston that I keep finding more stuff. I'm like, I'm in the South. I'm right. I'm doing this now. And then I just keep finding more stuff because I like it. So I'm going to find more creepy things as I go there. And it's kind of like the same thing that in the aspect of like Pirates of the Caribbean and Jean Lafitte, in that he smuggled in a lot of treasure. I love this. I love the story. There was a pirate that smuggled in treasure into Boston and stole something from a French ship, and now it's on our church in the North End. And it's still there. And then they're connected and everything. It's like, what? And that was the same thing with like Salem. It's very known for witch trials, but there's so much. It was like a kind of a red light district as well. And like nobody kind of talks about that because the Salem witch trials just took over. So yeah. But you'll see it. You're going to see it.
Yeah.
You're going to live it and you're going to see it, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. And I truly do. I definitely think we would love to see this, come forward someday. I know you don't have any place, particular any area of the country, in mind, as for where to actually set it. But I think it's the kind of thing, and I think it's such a big concept, because at the end of the day, I guess from what I take from what your what your kind of thesis is these are all kind of can be scary stories or strange stories, but they all are different, but their existence alone in its own way unites us all.
Absolutely.
Because, we all come from different walks of life and, have these different fears, but just the fact that these stories can grow and, chart their own course. It's just I think this is a real testament to storytelling in general there. So it's pretty great.
Yeah. I'm excited. I love that other people are excited because it gets me excited. I'm like, they like it, and that's nice, and I'm glad I have people that support it, and that, like, I love that it's nice when I see that people are apprehensive, and then I answer, and they're like, "Oh, you sound like you know what you're doing," and I said, "I would hope so. I'm trying to do just as much justice for other people to see, like, that the whole thing is literally, it's like America's a melting pot." So you're gonna have to you have to show it. There's no it's so exciting. It's lovely to see how different, even in dialect, how expansive America really is. Such kiss.
So my curiosity is, because you said this was a senior project. So where did you how far did you get into this before you started now publishing it and interacting with people online? How far did your research go, and then where's that now jump? Where was your jumping off point now that you're TikTok famous now with this?
Yeah.
Going public.
Sounds so weird to say. TikTok famous. It's kind of, I'm still researching as I go. And like I said, if other people give me pieces of research that they've done, I still take it and I work with it, and I love hearing about it because they bring up aspects that I didn't even think of. Somebody that I keep in touch has been wonderful talking to me about the original aspects of vaudeville, and how that was a big aspect of theater life in the city, and all those aspects, which were just I was didn't even think of it. And then that kind of stemmed into searching up ventriloquism and where that started, and how that has a connection to deeper roots of a connection with the dead, and how that was kind of a sense of divination, which is okay, now we come full circle. Great. But when I started actually sketching and building, I only did one part, which was supposed to be Louisiana, because I only had a semester. So they're like, you can't do a whole park, and I was like, I know it's not gonna work. Gotcha. So I kind of focused on those areas and try to do kind of an encompassing aspect of this one area. So I did signage, and I did the map, and I focused on one attraction, and I kind of just presented it that way. And some of it came across, some of it did, some of it didn't, and that's okay. And then I just kept at it. I kept going. I said, okay, I'm gonna set it aside. I'm gonna set Louisiana to the side for a moment, because I can't look at it right now. I spent 2 semesters on it. I can't. So I was like, okay, we're gonna start from the start. We're gonna start at the entrance and start where I know. And that's going to be the East. And so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do New England, and I'm going to do that. And then I was like, okay. And then we're just going to keep chugging along and keep sketching. And that's where a lot of the prototype maps are. Because, wow. I don't know how people that play Dungeons and Dragons do it, because I'm stressed. The map making is stressful. And it took me a while to even get the littlest aspect, and I'm milking it. I am milking this one aspect of the map that I did. I'm like, look at it. I want you all to look at it because it took me so long to do. But yeah, I'm just kind of going, and then I'm having people come along. And yeah, hoping for the best, and hope people stay engaged, because it really is it's kind of, I'm figuring it out as I go and having help as I go. And it's opening up. I mean, I'm on a podcast, so it's opening up to things. And it's great, and coming to contact with people and meeting wonderful people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so I just got to ask you point blank. So let's say, someone reaches out, say they're from, I don't know, Anheuser-Busch, and they want to do a new Busch Gardens park, but make it kind of your idea. Not literally Busch Gardens, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. They want to open up a new park, and they say, we like what you've been doing, and we think it would be great. So if the opportunity presents itself, would you go full forward, with this?
I think to have a bigger team I would like that, but also I'm like, no, it's not ready. It's not ready. Don't get it. But like also, I don't know. That's such a good question because I'm like, do I give away the rights to it? It's like that. It's like, oh, that's a little. It kind of leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth to be like,
yeah,
Busch Gardens. Like I know, and I've seen their stuff, and I think they do good. But it's like almost on that level that I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to be. I don't want it to be known as Busch Gardens. I want it to be like. I want it to be my baby because it is my baby. I guess I would say no.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose I was trying to think of another company outside of the Universal or Disney.
Right.
But just if a theme park company like says, hey, we believe in your vision, we want to just fund it, and we're gonna we'll be the benefactor here. Like we're not gonna hold you back. We're just gonna the only thing is the budget. Yes. And here's kind of X ridiculous number. Would you no holds barred, creative control wise, would you go for it?
Yeah, I think I would, because I think it's like because people are so excited about it that it's like I don't want to deprive them of something that's like actually special. Because as much as like I am a Halloween person. But, I know we had this conversation that, Matt, you are a Christmas person, and I get it. It's wonderful. I think it's great. Like, I forget who it was. I'm always talking about TikTok, but he was showing all the stuff, all the decorations that are coming up in Disney. And it's like, I feel like I'm, like, swatting away spoilers because I'm like, I didn't even carve a pumpkin yet. Back off. Like, enough. But I'm also like, and then I hear, like, the Christmas music, and I'm like, so this is good. This festive, and I love it. And it's like, but I love holidays, so it's like I think that's why it's also just going to be really fun to like see how spooky to take on Christmas. Because like
yes,
that's something to also think about, just like seasonally, and how to keep people engaged as the seasons go, and be like, well, Krampus it's German, it's not American, it's also Russian, so it's like, where do you find those regions where it's actually kind of popular? So probably something that's closer to Canada. So I'd have to look into that. Which another thing to research.
Vibe, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. I don't know. I guess so. If I had like complete creative control, why deprive the people of what they want? What they want. The people have spoken. All 50,000.
Well, speaking of what the people want, we did have one other email here from a listener, and I thought what a perfect opportunity to kind of flex not just our kind of creative muscles, but Jules, your fantastic ideas and creative muscles. So I thought I'd bring this up here as we kind of approach the end of this episode. So here was the email. A challenge. Let's say Disney is opening a new park in, I don't know, Australia. They've placed you in charge of the haunted mansion there. They have said that while it may include elements from other iterations, it must also have new elements. So roughly 1/3 at least of everything has to be new. What's your vision? Does it have a cohesive story? Who voices the ghost host? Is there even, or if there even is one? What do you pull from other mansions, and what do you add that's new? And I thought this was a great way to kind of mesh the previous episodes with this one. So, Jules, what do you think you would do if you were doing a Australian haunted mansion or a haunted outback?
I'm very glad you gave me a heads up on this, because I've been thinking about it all weekend. So, as much as like I understand that like the Disney World version is very reminiscent of colonial, but it's a very Tudor style home. It's a Tudor style manor, technically, even though it's mansion, it's a manor. But I digress. I would want to do a funeral home, like a bigger funeral home. because I don't want it, because it's very, you have Disney World and Disneyland that do a retirement home. And then you have the French or the Paris one that is an actual house. It's but it's like, obviously it focuses on kind of like the Phantom of the Opera kind of aspect of that. But I wanted to focus on something that's very, very New England. I'm going to be very biased again. It's going to be a funeral home, colonial style. And I want it to be off the coast. So when you're in the graveyard scene, you see a lighthouse in the back. It's very much like reminiscent of, and it has safety coffins and focuses. Because remember we were talking about the safety bells as playing a song.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's something that I kept in mind, that it could play Grim Grinning Ghost with the safety bells. And also the safety coffins.
Ooh, that'd be creepy.
Yeah, and very, like I said, like the focus on both the aspect that it's technically a retirement home because it's a funeral home, that your wake is you becoming part of the party, and you're part of the party. That's what it is. I thought that would be something that's very reminiscent. I think figure-wise, oh, I don't know. I love Constance, and I like that she's this very like fiery figure, but maybe, but I think bringing back the aspect of the pirate and bringing back, or either focusing on the funeral, the people that hold the funeral, and have it kind of focus on their family and having all those pieces together. And I love that. I guess we'll just have to take a few pieces.
That's great. No, that's great. And do you think you would change the name, or just keep it or what do you think you would call that? Would it still be a haunted mansion, or
right?
Would it be?
I don't know, because like it would still be. I mean, maybe you can call it the Haunted Manor, but it doesn't have a shtick like Haunted Mansion does. So I think if in a vein, I would stick Haunted Mansion. But I don't know.
All
That's a good question.
Well, I'll let you think on that for a minute. Matt, what did you? Because I tried to give everybody heads up here.
Yeah, I at this point, I none of my ideas compare to what I'm sure. Well, obviously what Jules just came up with, and what you came up with too. But I would say my one add-on to this is that I need Hugh Jackman as the ghost host.
Yes. I thought about that too. Mm-hmm. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think Hugh Jackman would be awesome. And just going off of your funeral home concept, it could be I could just see him like being this funeral home owner, like this esteemed like legacy funeral company.
Just to interject real quick, could we make him the Master Gracie in the Haunted Mansion movie coming out soon? Because I could like that low voice. That well. You know? Welcome, foolish mortal. Like, I'd like that. I'm sorry. Proceed.
Yeah, him bringing out a million dreams.
Oh my gosh.
Beautiful. But yeah, that's all I'm going to contribute. I think that's because I was thinking this I was being really silly about it, like thinking like skeletons of koalas and things, but I was being very stereotypical in that regard. But yes,
but you want it very much in Australian.
Before I offend any Australians, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay, all right, but you wanted it to be like squarely set in Australia.
Yes, huge. Yeah, okay. I think it'd be fun to have an Australian kind of based, because we kind of have we've kind of really kind of keyed in on the tropes of like different times in American history and culture. I think it'd be fun to see a different culture approach the American.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of how Paris did a little bit, but
yes, yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, so I mean, my thinking was, I love ghost stories from all around the world. There was a very famous haunted house in Australia called the Monte Cristo Homestead, and I think it was part plantation, and there were a lot of rough stories that honestly aren't very Disney appropriate from from very unpleasant deaths in the house, and the master of the house was, it was very dark. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, each of the American haunted mansions, at least, they're in their own little squares. You have New Orleans Square. You have, wow, I'm just blanking.
Liberty Square?
Liberty Square. Yeah, thank you. Liberty Square. And they're, different pieces of, American history. So I tried to take a different approach here, and I would say that there would be a land called Britannia Square, which is very much old England. And this would be very European based, and you would have either an abbey or a castle, maybe even something akin to Crimson Peak. I know, we've talked about that, and it would be a very, 16th, 17th century house. So you're going through something like, maybe kind of akin to, I keep seeing like sort of a Georgian era kind of ghosts coming out, and you can have something like that where it's very gothic, more so I think than the American counterparts. There are a lot of haunted castles there, and you could have 16th century, in the Baroque kind of style ghosts, and a lot more there, because I think a lot of our ghosts, other than kind of the anomalies of like the mummies and things and Julius Caesar, you have a lot of 1800s, 19th century sort of style ghosts here, which works, and that's fine. And I think that's sort of just where a lot of that American the spiritualism movement is very present here. But you have all these Gothic castles and all these things, even a little bit of Hamlet in there. So I think that would be cool. Also, while tying to history about with Britain kind of colonizing it and being still very closely tied there. I'm not sure if it's still part of the. I don't fully know how England works, but that's just sort of my thoughts on how I would do it. And I would say like maybe Haunting Hall or Haunted Hall or something like that. Cool. For an idea there, but anyway, yeah, I just thought it'd be fun if we all kind of threw some different ideas out there, especially with with something that interactive from one of our listeners. It was very exciting. But anyway, Jules, we've had such a great time here on the Hubgrass with you. Thank you so much for coming on. This has just been a really great episode. So if people kind of want to, take a deeper dive onto your work, where's the best place that they can find you?
Oh, well, you can find me in Massachusetts. Usually I can be late. But you can find me on Instagram at Juliana.Cecere. And you can find me on TikTok on Urban Legends _America. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
All right, fantastic.
I'm more interactive on TikTok, though.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Definitely. Okay. All right. So listeners, yes, please go out and follow and support this project that she's doing, because I am going to be an annual pass holder when this place opens. I'll be there. We'll be there opening day. So, Matt, were there any other things we needed to touch on before we headed off to our lightning lane for Thunder Mountain this evening?
Oh, well, I don't think there's anything else to talk about today other than just make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Yeah. And happy Halloween.
Yeah.
Hey, folks. Thanks for listening. If you want more Hubgrass in your life, you can find Matt separately at Matt Arterberry on TikTok or on YouTube at Matt and Mary Kate. Or you can find me at Unofficial Disney CEO on TikTok. Of course, you can always find us together on our Instagram at OnTheHubgrassPod, where we post content regularly. If you like what we do and you want to help make our show better, please consider joining our Patreon. Until next time, remember, there's a great, big, beautiful podcast, and it's just a stream away. We'll see you on the Hubgrass, folks.